Hello and Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this evening for the reading on Rekiya Z. My name is Muti'ah. I am a Nigerian homeschooling mother and obstetrician currently practicing in Saudi Arabia. I also write contemporary Islamic fiction, and Rekiya Z is my latest book. And Rekiya Z is it's a book that I had to dig really deep to write. Fun fact, it took me 5 years to write the book. And that's because sometimes I had to, let it go, especially when it got too much. But fortunately, I had, supportive friends and family to make the dream a reality. Today, I'm going to be reading about the character of Rekiya, which, as the name suggests, is one of the main characters of the book. And she's actually the most intriguing character I have written till date in my relatively short, writing career. And I have selected two portions of the book to introduce us to Rekiya. And yeah, I hope you enjoy connecting with her the way that I did. Now, this reading is going to be streamed across multiple platforms, and a special thank you to the Muslim Women Times for hosting me on their clubhouse room. So once I'm done with the reading, if you have any questions or comments, if you're not in Clubhouse, please just drop it in the comment section, and I'll try to get answer that, inshallah. Obviously, the people in Clubhouse who have the opportunity to come on stage and ask their own questions. So yeah, without further ado, I'm going to go straight into the first section. So the first selection I chose is actually the beginning of the book, and it's where we meet Rekiya for the first time, and I thought that it was a good place for us to meet her. So, prologue. I'm starting now. Prologue. My eyes sweep over the room one more time as I walk back to my seat. The restrained smile on my face will be considered self-satisfied by most people present. They will be wrong. I, on the other hand, had no problem deciphering the somewhat enthusiastic applause that accompanied the end of my presentation. Part admiration, part amazement, mostly envious. No one seated in that room had any misconception about what the figures that I had just gone through meant. My supposedly already phenomenal meteoric rise in the finance world just got shot to the stratosphere. In the cutthroat world of international business, this latest success translated to less space on the proverbial rung of the corporate ladder for many of the people clapping. Stopping every few steps, I accept the reluctant congratulations of my colleagues and the more effusive praise from the partners and directors who had flown in for this meeting. I had just made them more money, after all, tons of it. I sat through the last few minutes of the meeting with what had been termed, snidely I believe, my customary cool. No one looking will guess what I felt right then. Nothing. I recently closed a deal that would put my name on the list of who's who in international finance, making the firm and myself considerably richer. This was the elusive career-making deal, the stuff of legends. And since I had never been besieged by false modesty, I appreciate the enormity of what I have done. I had just pulled off the improbable. When I accepted the job of heading the startup division 18 months ago, I understood quite clearly the unstated risk. My entire career was riding on the success of this venture. And it had been hard work, an audacious accomplishment made possible only by the work of my small but dedicated staff of overachievers, all carefully selected and ruthlessly ambitious, mostly local. We had burned the midnight diesel, power outages being one of the staples that doing business in Nigeria entailed. And it had paid off. Our previously experimental division would now become a fully functional branch with 3 times the initial staff, all of whom were getting raises, added benefits, and all sorts of promotion. I, Rekiya Yusuf, in in just 32 at just 32 sorry at just 32 had been named the chief financial officer Africa of a major international finance company. In local parlance, I don't arrive. Yet I felt nothing. It would be scary, this feeling, if it wasn't so familiar. But I've been here before. In truth, I lived in it, in this void of nothingness, for years. With the challenge of the past few months, I let myself hope, let myself believe that I was finally past it. Apparently, I had been wrong. My cell phone rings just as I return to the office assigned to me. I root through my handbag, noting distractedly that the number was unregistered. Hello, Rukaya? I pause. I hadn't been Rukaya in a decade. Is this Rukaya Gbadamasi? That voice, the emotion it bore. I knew them intimately, but not together. Yes, tentative, the response is out of character for the woman that I have worked so hard to become. A sigh breathed across the lines, carrying its own weight in burdens. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Chapter 1. I maneuvered the car through the crowded road, flanked on both sides by the boisterous Bodija market, and marveled on how little had changed in the years since I was here. Yeah. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Yeah, I'm still going on. I maneuvered the car through the crowded road flanked on both sides by the boisterous Bodija market and marveled at how little has changed in the years since I was here. The road, still choked to almost a single lane on either side, was teeming with traders, street peddlers displaying their wares and in innovative manners that had no regard for the traffic swirling about them, and their customers haggling over the smallest bit of bargain. They all paid no heed whatsoever to the inconvenience they caused. Bargaining is a time-honored tradition in this part of the world. Pedestrians and commuters abound, coming, going, chasing, or dropping off from the numerous buses, and surely these, locally referred to as danfo, were the most rugged contraptions to bear that name. They idled or drove by at a snail's speed, hanging off the space for the usually absent doors, and the conductors added their own lyrics to the cacophony of noise. Agbowo, UI, Ojo. The scene held a distinctive bustle of an African city. Yes, it was less frenetic than would be expected of one of this size. It was welcoming. It was a welcome relief from the almost manic pace of Lagos and had a much slower, less desperate air to it. The place boasted a distinct something, a soul, if you will, that I had never noticed until now was lacking in Abuja. This was the incongruous, seemingly irreconcilable oddity that is Ibadan, the largest city in West Africa. A feeling of homecoming, as undeniable as it was fleeting, washes over me. I lived in this city for a mere 7 years as a girl, most of it in the controlled environment of Noura, the girls' only Muslim boarding secondary school I attended. I haven't been back in 10 years. It is disconcerting that I feel, even so briefly, as though this was home. It was something I never felt about any other place in my entire rootless existence. Not in the city of my childhood, not in the city of my childhood and current residence, and definitely not in my country of birth and citizenship by default. A few meters ahead, beyond the chaos of the market, I make a turn. The roads in this largely residential area are older. The tarred surface is always in perpetual battle with the dead path that would have been, in a country where things like that mattered, a sidewalk. Erosion from a high annual rainfall and the lack of an effective drainage system, as well as endemic absence of a maintenance culture, made it a losing fight. This road was nothing but a strip of tar and was fringed on both sides by a large part of dirt, generously dotted with potholes. I pulled into the side street and stepped back in time. I parked in front of a nondescript single story house and shoved down the emotions that threatened to overwhelm me. Since the phone call yesterday, I had gone from feeling nothing to feeling everything. I can't handle my emotions. Also, my former therapist always said, I do what she was forever accusing me of. I push them aside, take a deep breath, and exit the car. The gate is not locked. If memory served, finding it locked in daytime meant that no one was home. The door swings open inwardly before I get a chance to knock. Though I couldn't see into the shadowy interior of the house from my position in the blazing sun, I knew there was someone behind the door. That door had been a hijab for the women of this house since long before I knew them. I step into the cool, dark house and find myself automatically going through the motions born from a lifetime ago. I move off to the side, toe off my shoe, and turn to put them away. The shoe rack is different, newer, but it occupied the same spot. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Zainuna stood where I envisioned her, in the space previously shielded by the now closed door. I'm so glad you could come. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm relieved and maybe a bit saddened that she did not try to hug me. I'm so sorry about you. I falter briefly. Mommy, may Allah forgive her and admit her into His mercy and grant you all the fortitude to bear the loss. I mean, I cringe inwardly at the stilted formality of my speech and at the quiet distance in her reply. Silence, short and uncomfortable, ensues. Then, coming to the kitchen, I'm alone in the house. Daddy went to the farm. I'm supposed to be going through mommy's stuff, but a small shrug, a wet smile. I'm baking. How long can you stay? I'm really sorry I pulled you away from your whatever brought you to Lagos. When do you have to go back? There is so much I do not understand from what she said, but I do not ask her. Her rambling speech, after all, sprung from the same place as my awkward condolence speech. It is no problem, I wave away her concerns. I was already done. And it's a good thing I was in Lagos this week, so I can maybe get a hotel, stay a few days. Oh, you have to stay here, she interrupts. You have to stay here. You know you're always welcome here. That assertion, the floodgates of memories and emotions carried in its wake, was too much. I bolt. Okay, I'm going to go bring in my bag then. I toss over my shoulder as I yank the door open and rush out. Sitting in the car, I try to find some calm, some refuge from all the emotions that had been washing over me since the fateful phone call yesterday. I had gone from an abyss of feeling of nothingness to this unfamiliar state of emotional overload. As someone who has spent the past decade or so of her life completely detached from her emotions, I'm not sure how to handle this. When Zainuna called me out of the blue yesterday that her mom was dead, I had known this trip was going to be difficult. I just hadn't realized that much. How much, sorry. So this is the portion where we meet Rekiya for the first time. Like I mentioned, I just wanted to give us an insight to who our character was when we first met her. And so now I will go to the second section that I picked for us to see or not, how a character evolved towards the end of the book. It's not exactly the end, but Close enough. I arrived at Brother Issa's and Jumai's farmhouse just minutes after Z and her brood. I'm going to be reading this from, let me see what chapter this is. I'm not even sure. This is chapter 17. So, like I said, towards the end of the book on page 235, if you wanted to read along. This is going to be a much shorter selection than the first one, so inshallah. I arrived at Brother Issa and Jumai's farmhouse just minutes after Z and her brood. Professor Sanusi's move to the farm evidently meant that it had become the de facto venue for family gatherings, a fact that made me hesitate over the invite. Rosie was a pro at disregarding my excuses and thrusting me into the midst of her family. So here we are. Oh, just context, Z in this case is the other main character, and she's the one she's referring to. Like bygone Sanusi family gatherings of my experience, this one too was relaxed, segregated, and had only grown louder with the addition of almost a dozen kids. The men gathered at Prof's place. He had moved into one of the visitors' chalet on the farm, saying that he preferred to have a place of his own. It is just a few minutes' walk from the 5-bedroom home his son's family occupy, which is where the women held fort. Jumai's home was lovely, spacious and airy, with an abundance of light from the huge windows that had only the sheerest of lace for curtains. In this expanse of land that was their farm, even the fence that demarcated the house yard from the rest of the farm was superfluous. There were no peeping toms or neighbors to be concerned about. And the house radiated a kind of joyful warmth that only comes to those who take for granted that no one is watching. The kids, of course, had a blast, running between both gatherings, and the outdoor activities and innocent frolicking must have just been an additional benefit. The day passed on eventfully, but by Maghrib I had had enough. Enough of aid and meat and family and people. I sat down on the praying mat, watching as the other women finished their nawafil and dua and left, pondering the sad realization that this year was my first family Eid celebration ever. As a child, I never knew why my father was never around. I'm not even sure if those particular absences, I'm not even sure if I noted those particular absences as peculiar until much later. And my mother, with her customary indifference to anything once he wasn't around, never got into the celebration beyond the obligatory ram that was slaughtered and invariably eaten by her friends in a party-like atmosphere. The few times I attended the Eid Salah had been in the company of the domestic staff, and I stopped doing even that after my mother remarried. In her new Christian household, Eid would have been yet another reminder of how I did not belong. So, today, although I enjoyed this Eid with the Gbadamosis and the Sanusis, I was especially alone. Yet again questioning where I fit into the dynamics of this family that I called mine, but weren't. There you are, Juwaria. There you are. Juwaria stepped into the room. Mama J wants to know if you want dinner. She's sending some men. I grimace as I get up, grasping gratefully at the hand she extends to me. No, please. I don't think I should eat anything for at least 3 days, I say as we move to join the others in the living room. I suppose I can't hide out here forever anyway. Auntie Rekiya, she begins, biting her lower limbs in indecision, before finally rushing out her words in a whisper. Did you really reject that American man because he already had a wife? I thought he was a Muslim. Maybe he can marry more than one wife. I smile at Brother Isa and Tope's daughter, a wave of emotion washing over me. In the months since we returned from our inadvertent joint Umrah, I had come to care for the teenager a lot. She was the perfect mix of all the people who raised her. her parents, her mommy, and even Jumai. Sweetheart, marriage is a complex contract. I don't think either Zeke or myself were in a good place to enter such a life altering arrangement at that point. She cocks her head to the side like her father was wont to. So you didn't love him? She asked. I gasped in mock outrage. What do you know about love, Missy? I know enough, she sniffs and turns up her nose, and we both burst out into laughter. The other women look at us in inquiry as we make our entrance into the living room. I placed a hand on her shoulder before she could turn away. I think love is a verb, something you do, a choice. And choosing to love a man you know cannot fulfill your needs just so that you can be in a relationship is asking for misery. And I have had enough of that to last me a lifetime. I see the confusion swirling behind her eyes, another question brewing, but hold her off with a smile. You'll understand someday, I promise. Turning to join the company and endure a few more hours of human interaction.